So, what are the best vitamins and supplements for eye health and vision? In today's video, we're going to be breaking down the best nutrients and the best vitamins and supplements that have clinical research that can show us that we can slow down diseases that have already occurred, prevent diseases from even happening, as well as improve eyesight and visual quality. So, with that, I'm excited to dive right in and really kind of share with you something that I'm passionate about and have constantly been digging into the research and learning more and more about. If this is the first time here to the channel, my name is Dr. Joseph Allen. I'm a board-certified doctor of optometry. I'm a fellow of the American Academy of Optometry, as well as a diplomate of the American Board of Optometry. And I am the host here on the Dr. Eye Health channel, which is really dedicated to helping people learn about different eye diseases, their treatments, as well as different vision products, ways to help improve your eyesight both today and tomorrow. So with all of that, let's kind of dive right in. First, I want to give a shout out to all of our channel supporting members. For everybody who is part of a channel member, you help make these educations possible. We do these live streams every single month on a specific topic, and you channel members help make that possible. So thank you. And if anybody wants to learn more about how to become a supporting channel member, we do have links in the description below to learn a little bit more. With these live streams, they are recorded live, so everybody who is catching us right now, please let us know first, of course, where you're watching from, but even more so, are you currently taking any vitamins, supplements for the eye, and were they prescribed to you by your doctor, or are they something that you just found on the shelf at the store, or is it something that you learned about here on this channel? I'd love to know that, so please let us know. With eye health and nutrition, this is a huge topic, and this is something that I hate to admit, most doctors do not get much training on nutrition and its effects on the eye. We'll be talking about some supplements today that doctors, especially eye care providers, definitely learn about. We're taught it in school. We're tested on it in all of our board certification. It's part of basically our kind of gold standard or standard of practice at this point. And we'll be touching on those. But I just want to preface that this is still something that I think is a kind of a failure in modern medicine, is that we don't spend more time talking about lifestyle, talking about how food and diet, nutrition definitely affects us. So this is something I'm passionately always studying and learning more about. But nutrition plays a huge role when it comes to the eye. One of the major things that we always have to focus on with the eyes is that it is one of the most highly metabolic tissues in the entire body next to the brain. In fact, the retina in the back of the eye is an extension of the brain, and it's constantly bombarded by light energy. And that ends up resulting in high levels of oxidative stress in those tissues, as well as inflammation. And this requires constant catabolic and anabolic energy to generate lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids to help really repair those damaged tissues. One of the most famous vitamins that people probably think about when it comes to the eye is vitamin A. People think, oh, what's good for the eye? Carrots. Carrots have vitamin A. Technically, carrots have beta carotene, which your body converts to vitamin A. And it's true, your eyes do need vitamin A to see. It's an important process in phototransduction, or your retina cells being able to signal and talk to the brain. And without vitamin A, you can't really see that well. But vitamin A also plays a role with the surface of the eye and the vitality of different tissues within the surface of the eyeball, especially the cornea. Vitamin A deficiency is something that every eye doctor will learn about. This is where somebody has a really extreme low level of vitamin A in their body. They can have what's called xerophthalmia. This is symptoms of night blindness, so people can't see in dim light. They'll have bitot spots, which are kind of growths on the eyeball that occur due to this excessive dryness. But then they'll also have corneal and conjunctival xerosis. This is where the surface of the eye ends up looking kind of like an orange peel in a way, but it can even develop to full ulceration and necrosis, or death of the tissues on the surface of the eye, which is really extreme. Thankfully, this is a good thing. Vitamin A deficiency is not super common in developed nations or countries. Usually we only see this in places that have severe malnutrition, which is really unfortunate, especially for people who need more calories, like pregnant women and young children. They're at higher risk. And then in places where people have malaria, malaria causes chronic diarrhea. So foodstuffs are not in the digestive tract long enough for the body to even absorb the nutrients. And that's why they end up with vitamin A deficiency. Again, thankfully, in developed countries, like here in the US, where I live and practice, most people are not malnourished. In fact, they probably are on the opposite side. People are maybe almost too well fed. But that means that we usually just don't see vitamin A deficiency. But there are some people that that are at risk, such as people who've had bariatric surgery. They don't have enough room in their stomach to literally eat enough food. And usually if you've had bariatric surgery, you have to be put on additional supplements that include vitamin A. People who are on restrictive diets, if they are just like on like a potato chip diet, then they're probably not getting the proper nutrition. And then because vitamin A is stored in your liver, people who have liver or pancreatic disease because they can't digest vitamin A or absorb vitamin A through intestinal problems, they also are at risk of it. The reason I wanted to start off talking about vitamin A deficiency is really a chance to just kind of share kind of a warning message. I know that here on YouTube and online, people can hear a lot of information about vitamins and supplements. And I think it's just our human nature when we think, oh, I've got dry eye symptoms and severe dry eye can come from vitamin A deficiency. Oh no, I must have vitamin A deficiency. I'm going to go take a bunch of vitamin A. And I have to give a warning to that because more of a supplement or more of a vitamin isn't always the right answer. It can sometimes actually cause things to get worse. This is something that we call hypervitaminosis, and an upper limit of vitamin A of around 9,000 international units. We have patients who will come in and they'll end up having these type of symptoms of nausea, vomiting, headache, dizziness. They can even have vision problems like blurred vision and dry eyes. You can, in fact, get severe dry eyes from having too little vitamin A and too much vitamin A. And it can also lead to other problems like hair loss, hypothyroidism, bone, and joint pain. Another big thing that eye doctors are always aware of is a condition called pseudotumor cerebri. This is where, for many reasons, people can have elevated cerebral spinal fluid pressure, but excess vitamin A has been known to cause this elevated pressure of the cerebral spinal fluid, and that pushes on the optic nerve and sort of chokes it out. And that causes the nerve to swell due to, I'm going to get a little nerdy here, but it blocks what's called retrograde axoplasmic flow. And then the nerve swells. And if that pressure on the nerve sits there too long, it can cause damage to the nerve, leading to permanent vision loss. And so, again, really important that I just don't want people to kind of jump right in and say, hey, I'm going to start taking tons of supplements because I saw this online. And this isn't just to cover, my butt. I really just want people to be safe about this because we know some different supplements and vitamins can interact with medications. It can affect people differently if you have some other pre-existing condition. So I think it is always best to consult an optometrist, an ophthalmologist, or other qualified healthcare professional, nutritionist, dietitian, somebody who can better speak upon what's going to effectively impact your personal health and health status, especially if you're taking medications. Because again, a good question to ask family doctors or your primary care provider is if there's a type of food or a vitamin or supplement that may interact with the medication and prevent you from absorbing it. That's a really good question to ask. So without further ado, let's dive more into the really important supplements and nutrients that are good for eyesight and vision. So we're going to be talking on these big ones that affect all these different parts of the eye, whether it be eye strain, dry eye. We'll be touching on floaters, cataracts, macular degeneration, glaucoma, and then eyesight and visual performance. The biggest one right off the bat is lutein and zeaxanthin. And let me know again in the comments, or if you're in the comments or if you're here in the chat on the live, let me know if you've ever heard of lutein and zeaxanthin before. I've mentioned it in a few videos here on the channel, but I usually ask my patients about if they've ever heard of this, and a lot of people have never heard this term before. But lutein and zeaxanthin, these are carotenoid pigments. They're found in plants, things like kale, spinach, some peppers, avocado, pistachio have a little bit, and then eggs, chicken feed is actually supplemented with lutein to make their egg yolk more of a brighter yellow and orange color. But you can absorb lutein from things eating like eggs too. lutein works as a very potent antioxidant and anti-inflammatory. In fact, they deposit specifically in the eye and then parts of the brain. And within the eye, they protect against high energy light, mainly as a blue light blocker. They're your body's and nature's own blue light filter. They filter out that harsh energy light, and then they provide that antioxidant and anti-inflammatory effect to prevent damage from such high energy. A previous live stream we did last month on macular degeneration, I shared this slide about how studies showing higher plasma lutein, people who take more supplements or digest more lutein through foodstuffs, they are associated with a 37% reduced risk of developing advanced macular degeneration. And I've again shared this in a few other videos, but lutein has also been found to reduce stress due to cortisol. People who take lutein supplements also have better cognition and better memory with older age. They also can help with cognition and learning for young children. And then as far as eyesight goes, there's also clinical evidence that shows improved visual, less problems with glare, as well as improved contrast sensitivity. And this can further help just people's quality of their eyesight. And that's why a lot of professional athletes are even taking Lutein Zeaxanthin supplements to enhance their vision and see better during their competitive games and things. Generally, in the research, between 10 to 20 milligrams of lutein per day is considered optimal, and then 2 to 5 milligrams of zeaxanthin as well. Specifically talk about zeaxanthin, again, macular degeneration we talked about last month, but I wanted to just mention this because I thought it was a pretty profound study. For people with wet macular degeneration, so if anybody's watching and has maybe a family member who's had shots or injections inside of their eye, there's a good chance that maybe they have macular degeneration. And they did this study giving 20 milligrams of zeaxanthin, which is a lot, but they gave 20 milligrams of zeaxanthin per day, and that reduced the risk of needing additional shots or the progression or the advancement of macular degeneration converting to wet by about 26%. It's a significant reduction, not needing an injection inside of the eye, and those injections cost like $2,000 sometimes. So it ended up saving up to about $6 billion they projected over 11 years just because of taking a very safe supplement. So pretty amazing. The next one I want to talk about is astaxanthin. This is a little bit newer in the research, but very fascinating. Let me know if you've ever heard of astaxanthin as well, because again, it's a little bit newer. Astaxanthin can be found naturally in things like seaweed or algae. It's also found in crustaceans or kind of the, if you're a big seafood fan, so like shrimp, crab, lobster. I personally, growing up, I loved shrimp. It was one of like my favorite foods. But astaxanthin has an antioxidant power of almost 1,000 times greater than vitamin E. And it's found to help prevent nitric oxide degradation in your blood vessels, which helps blood vessel dilation, which is important for a lot of different conditions, including things like diabetes and glaucoma. And it's believed that may help support the optic nerve because of this blood flow. It's also been found as an antioxidant to maybe help with dry eye, as well as relax the ciliary body. If you haven't heard of the ciliary body before, that is a muscle inside of the eye. That's the muscle that helps you focus on something up close and relax to look at something in the distance. And one more recent study from just 2023, they did one a few years ago, actually using 5 milligrams of zeaxanthin or astaxanthin alone, and that showed improvement for eye strain. But this one used both astaxanthin and mixed with lutein and zeaxanthin, because lutein and zeaxanthin also have been found to help with eye strain to some degree. But they found that for people taking this in a double-blind placebo-controlled study, for eye strain on the computer was significantly reduced. And I think that's important to think about because so many of us spend so much of our day, even right now, if you're watching this on your phone or on your computer, and that can result in a lot of eye strain. And again, astaxanthin having that benefit is pretty unique. Dry eye also has been investigated. This one using a little bit more. This is 12 milligrams a day or 6 milligrams of astaxanthin twice a day. This one, I will mention, wasn't the best study. It had no control group. It only ran for a month. But they said, hey, let's measure all the parameters on these individuals in this study. Let's give them astaxanthin for a month, and then let's see what has changed. And they did show significant improvements in the symptoms of dry eye and their ocular surface disease index score. They had improved corneal staining, tear breakup time. Their tear film was more stable. And their meibomian gland oils, their meibum scores, and their expression from the glands improved as well. So pretty fascinating with that. I thought it was pretty incredible. Sorry about that. I was distracted by my phone. The meibum scores, pretty interesting because meibomian gland dysfunction is such a significant part of dry eye disease. Almost 86% of people with dry eye have some form of meibomian gland dysfunction. So the fact that that this study alone, again, it's not a huge study, but the fact that it did show improvement in those scores, I thought was really kind of interesting. It's something I'm going to be personally following a little bit closer in the research. Now we're going to talk about omega-3s. I've talked about omega-3s in several other videos, as well as our live stream last month, but it's important to know about what's going on and how omega-3s can affect the eye and why it's such a big, important topic for many different parts of the body, but specifically for the eyes. Now, omega-3s you get naturally from eating fish, mainly salmon, mackerel, sardines. These are more oily fish. Also from nuts, seeds like flaxseed, chia seed, walnut, hemp seeds, and then algae as well. Omega-3s are known really well for heart benefits, but also for brain health, joint health, infant development, cancer prevention, pain, allergies. And the National Institute of Health does recommend an intake of somewhere around 1,100 to 1,600 milligrams a day. As far as omega-3, if you're somebody who already takes omega-3 supplement, or if you think you already get enough in the diet, one way you can know for sure is to do omega-3 testing. This is something I got into about a year ago. I talked with other providers in the eye health space, and it's like, well, why are we recommending omega-3 supplements if we don't know really where our patients are at, right? Your family doctor is not going to start prescribing you high blood pressure medication or medications for diabetes unless they've tested your blood sugar and your blood pressure. So when it comes to omega-3s, I personally like to test for the blood index score. And so this is something I've done. You don't need a prescription to do this. You can order it online, just a finger prick. Then you test your blood, you send it in about a week, you get your results. This is something that I've used to know where I'm at for my diet, as well as when I've supplemented with omega-3s to know if they're really working. Because some omega-3s are kind of get a lot of bad rap because they may not be very good quality, or you may not be absorbing it very well. And so this is a way you can kind of know that. I reached out to Omega Quant after I had good success with them, and they did offer us a small discount. If you want to try this yourself, you can save about 5%. Every penny counts, right, in this economy. But I put a discount code in the description below, so you can check that out if you'd like. But specifically for eye health, dry eye and retinal health is where a lot of the research and focus is for eye doctors. If you're not too aware, omega-3, the reason why it's supposed to be good for the body is there's kind of this teeter-totter ratio of omega-3 versus omega-6. There needs to be a balance. In most people's diets, especially in modern society, if you eat a lot of processed food, higher amounts of omega-6s. Omega-6 is way up on the scale, and omega-3 is pretty far down. But omega-3s in the body get processed. They compete with omega-6s, and omega-3s have more of an anti-inflammatory effect with what are called resolvins and protectins. And then omega-6s lead to prostaglandins, leukotrienes, and thromboxanes, which are more pro-inflammatory. There is one special omega-6 called gamma-linoleic acid, GLA, which does have an anti-inflammatory effect, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. The important thing with dry eye, I want people to understand, is there is still quite a bit of a debate in the eye care space around the effectiveness of omega-3s as a treatment for dry eye. However, a more recent meta-analysis and systematic review of randomized controlled trials just published last year in 2023 did result that they said, yes, it seems like omega-3s are effectively at reducing dry eye disease symptoms, especially in higher doses for longer duration and with increased levels of EPA. Because in omega-3s, you have ALA, which is more from vegetable sources, which your body can convert to EPA and DHA. And usually if you eat more of an animal source or an algae oil, you can get EPA and DHA. But the kind of agreed upon consensus is at least 1,000 milligrams a day, as well as somewhere between 2,000 to 3,000 milligrams a day may be better to get you fast results. However, it takes about 3 months, 2 to 3 months for your body to really incorporate those levels of omega-3 and start feeling the benefits. That's in my personal experience, as well as just from what I've collected from research and talking with other professionals in this space. I know we're getting a lot of questions here in the live chat, so just keep all those questions toward the end so I can kind of walk through all the slides and get this information out to everybody. And then stick around for the live Q&A toward the end, because then we'll be taking questions live for everybody. I do want to be fair. For the positive in the research about omega-3s and dry eye, there is some negative, and these are probably the most prominent research studies. This comes from what's called the DREAM study. The DREAM study was a larger scale study looking at omega-3s. They actually supplemented with 3,000 omega-3, 2,000 EPA, 1,000 DHA, and they compared it to a placebo, which was actually 5,000 milligrams of olive oil. And this was kind of a real world trial. People were still able to take medications and treatments for dry eye, and they did it for a full year. And at the end, they found no significant difference between the fish oil versus the olive oil. And kind of there's several different criticisms out there about this study from eye care professionals, but probably one of the biggest ones is that, well, olive oil, is that truly a placebo? Because olive oil has a lot of polyphenols in it. Maybe that already had an anti-inflammatory effect. They then took that study and did another publication a few years later, which just came out this last year. And they took the people who already were on the omega-3s for the first study, and they then split them, saying, hey, half of you, we're going to have you continue on omega-3s. The other half, we're going to have you switch over to the placebo, and let's see what happens. And really their most significant findings was that there probably was a strong placebo effect. In the first 3 months, people continued to have improvements in their symptoms and signs. And so they weren't fully able to explain that, but they believe it was a placebo effect. And then the only other thing they found significant was improvement in conjunctival staining. And I have a photo here. In the eye clinic, we stain the surface of the eye, and we can see devitalized cells that have been damaged on the eye because of how dry the eye is. And this was still significant to me. I think it's important as an eye care practitioner who treats a lot and manages a lot of dry eye. If there is a way for us to improve that surface of the eye, the conjunctiva staining is able to be reduced by taking omega-3. I still think that's a huge win. Plus, omega-3s have so many other benefits for the body. So I still think in my own anecdotal experience, as well as just what I see in the clinic, I have a lot of patients who tell me that they have great success from taking an omega-3. And let me know, for everybody who is catching it live, or if you're catching this on the replay, let me know in the comments, if you take an omega-3s, have you noticed an improvement in any dry eye symptoms? I think it's as valid. I'd love to hear yay or nay. But I have done several videos on this before. If you want more just deep dive into the science and literature, I have ones that don't even talk about brands. I have other videos where I do talk about comparing different brands of omega-3s, as well as my own personal journey taking it for 3 to 4 months and how that affected my dry eyes. So those are all really good resources. Now, I do want to talk about retinal health for a second. So if you're not super familiar, again, the back of the eye, the retinal tissue, those photoreceptors are about 50 to 60% made of DHA omega-3s. The lipids in those are all that type of DHA. So it's really significant for eye health. With that, there have been plenty of studies over the years looking at like dietary consumption of omega-3 related to eye diseases, mainly fish consumption for macular degeneration. And they find that people who eat more fish have a reduced risk of developing macular degeneration by up to about 50%. Same thing for diabetes. In fact, an enormous amount of research is looking into diabetes because diabetes affects about 11% of the US population already is diagnosed with diabetes. Another 35 to almost 50% of the population has pre-diabetes or has glucose insensitivity, or insulin insensitivity, which is pretty alarming. But diabetes significantly affects the eye, and this is a major part of any education for an eye doctor, is the fact that diabetes can lead to bleeding in the back of the eye, as well as fluid accumulation and scarring. And even when the back of the eye looks pristine, if someone's diabetic, there's still a chance the function of the retina may be reduced, and that can affect their vision. And diabetes is the #1 cause of permanent vision loss and blindness for working age adults. So yeah, studying omega-3s and anything we can do to reduce the effect of diabetes on the retina and the back of the eye is going to be important. But they find that omega-3s may reduce the risk of diabetes in general. It may decrease the risk of developing retinopathy from diabetes, and it improves the recovery of macular edema due to diabetes, or swelling in the back of the eye. There are, again, studies going yay and nay. Some studies saying it significantly reduces the risk of diabetic retinopathy when supplemented with omega-3s. And then there are other studies, like this one that was fairly recent publication, showed no clinically meaningful benefits. However, again, it's all about the dose. And I find in that study, they only used 460 milligrams of EPA and about 380 milligrams of DHA, which is a very low concentration. So I'm honestly not too surprised by their finding and reports. But again, just to be fair, while yes, there's research showing that people who eat more fish reduces the risk of macular degeneration, there are studies showing that people who take supplements of omega-3 don't get those same results. And this was a 2015 Cochrane analysis finding that, yeah, there was no real benefit, no real need to recommend taking an omega-3 supplement for prevention or reducing the progression of macular degeneration. So how can that be? How can there be studies showing, yes, if you eat more fish, that reduces your risk, but if you take supplements of fish oil, it doesn't do anything? It leaves a lot of questions. And again, I talked about this last month a little bit more in depth with macular degeneration lecture. But there are right now new forms of DHA omega-3s that are being studied. There's right now, if you just buy any sort of, most types of omega-3 supplements are in the form of what are called triacylglycerol DHA, or TAG DHA. There's a new form called lysophospholipid DHA, or LPC DHA. And the significance of this, and this isn't going to be on a test or anything, but your body can convert triacylglycerol DHA to a more active form that your brain and neural tissue will absorb, but it takes a long process. It actually has to go through your liver, so it's not really efficient. Where phospholipid DHAs, which are in most fish, natural fish that you eat, and fish roe or fish eggs even more so, have both some triacylglycerol, but they also contain some of this lysophospholipid DHA, which your brain can absorb very readily. It's very efficient and can absorb almost 100-fold of that DHA into the neural tissues. And so right now they're looking at isolating lysophospholipids from other forms of fish foods and then turning that into a supplement all on its own. And they're testing this out right now. This is very new, but they're using it in rat and mice studies, specifically for retinal health, as well as brain diseases like Alzheimer's disease. And so really fascinating things. Unfortunately, right now, because it's so new, there's no human trials that are available in the public evidence. So I'm not able to make recommendations of how much people should be taking of any specific type of DHA like that. But I still think it's fascinating. I want people to know about it because as more research comes out, I'm going to be reporting on it as soon as I get that. The next one I want to talk about is vitamin D. A lot of people have probably heard about vitamin D and concerns about vitamin D deficiency. In fact, it's been speculated that 30 to 50% of the population, even places where people have a lot of sunlight, might be vitamin D deficient, mainly because our current lifestyles, everyone's indoors most of the day. I know I live in a northern hemisphere, and when it's wintertime, I almost never see sunlight, right? Because if I do go outside, I'm wearing a winter jacket and my body's covered from head to toe. So a lot of people may, in fact, be deficient in vitamin D to some degree. Vitamin D helps regulate calcium absorption, your immune system, and inflammatory regulation. And there are clinical studies showing that people who are vitamin D deficient have an increased risk for dry eye and maybe glaucoma, keratoconus, and even corneal haze with corneal wound healing after eye surgeries, like LASIK, for example. So it's vitamin D deficiency is something that people are looking at more closely. Now, before people go run off and take vitamin D supplements, keep in mind that a lot of people are getting vitamin D already as a supplement in fortified foods like milk and dairy. Vitamin D is already supplemented in there. Usually there's around 200 to 300 international units in a single serving of, like, let's say, a glass of milk. You can, of course, read the back of the label of what you're about to eat or digest. This is just a supplement protocol for vitamin D that's been published back in 2011 by Clinical Endocrine Metabolism Guidelines. What I like to include in there is that I like to include this because when you go to the store, if you look at all the different supplements on the shelf, I've seen ones out there for like 10,000 international units. That's a lot of vitamin D. And usually you're only going to be using that if you are in a very short-term regulated kind of recommendation for somebody to come off of being vitamin D deficient. You're only taking that high volume, high dose for a short time. So I just wanted people to have kind of this as an awareness. On the other side of the table, you'll see daily intake in healthy individuals. So a normal healthy range recommendation is between 400 to 600 international units of the vitamin D of supplementation. But there is special populations, and special populations are people who are taking certain medications that affect vitamin D absorption, people who have digestional issues or some other condition where they may not absorb vitamin D regularly. And then I would maybe even include people who spend an enormous amount of time indoors and don't see sunlight that often. So that, might include you. It's tough to say. But I just want you to be aware of these numbers, and there is risk of people getting too much vitamin D and people taking too much of supplements. So good question. If you're thinking maybe, are you vitamin D deficient? Maybe ask your family doctor what they would recommend as a supplement for you if there's a certain amount that may be good. So I just thought this would be really good information for everyone to be aware of. The next one is curcumin. Curcumin I've talked about in a few other videos before, but curcumin is a derivative of turmeric, the spice turmeric, and has been found to have anti-inflammatory and antioxidant effects, helps with diabetes and atherosclerosis, and also it may help with polycystic ovarian syndrome, metabolic syndrome, fatty liver, and other cardiovascular and digestion issues. For the eye, curcumin has been studied for dry eye, also uveitis, a terrible inflammation inside of the eye, for cataracts, diabetes, macular degeneration, and glaucoma. Now, again, there's so many studies, so I dug into them, tried to find like a commonality between them all, right? What's the recommended dosage that may help people the most? Now, this is in curcumin, not the turmeric. So turmeric, there's different levels of turmeric in research when people are taking it as a supplement because it's not as efficient. Curcumin is a derivative and is much more efficient inside the body. That being said, if you look at curcumin supplements, between 500 to 1,500 milligrams a day is typically what's recommended. Black pepper or piperine is often included in there because it helps with absorption. It actually affects the lining of your digestive system and helps the bioavailability of curcumin. However, something newer in the last 5 years, there is the development of nanocurcumin or a microcellular curcumin. And this is supposed to have 60 times the bioavailability of regular curcumin. I cannot find studies that compares them side by side, which one's more bioavailable. The other frustrating thing I would say about nanocurcumin is that there's usually no labels on the supplements to tell us that it's nanocurcumin versus just other curcuminoids. So it's tough to know. But I will mention one specific brand of eye supplement that has just come out that includes curcumin, and I had to reach out to that company to find out that it is indeed using the nanocurcumin, which is more bioavailable. Niacin. This is vitamin B3. There's a little bit more attention and research going into vitamin B3 right now in the eye care space because vitamin B3 helps with a lot of processes in the body, but mainly does also affect mitochondrial dysfunction and neuroprotection. It helps with your body producing more ATP, basically more cellular energy and vitality for the cells of the body. And this is huge for anything that affects the central nervous system and certainly your eyes, primarily for people who are at risk of glaucoma. So this was a study that was done just here in a few years ago in 2020. This is where they gave people about 1.5 grams a day of niacin for 6 weeks, and then gradually increased it up to 3 grams a day for an additional 6 weeks, and they did it versus a placebo. People found in the study, they reported improved visual field mean deviation, about 27% for people who are taking the niacin, and then improved PHNR, which is a photopic negative response. That's a special test that we use in the clinic. Even where I practice, we use an electroretinogram. Basically, we flash lights at the eye, and it sends a signal through the eye, through the nerve to the brain, and back. And we're able to measure how electrical responses travel through the nerve. And the photopic negative response helps us know how well the nerve is functioning. And so the fact that we can see a better response in the people taking the niacin helps kind of show that the niacin may be supporting the vitality of the nerve and keeping it healthier, sending better signals. A newer study just here in 2022, published in JAMA Ophthalmology, looked at combining niacin or nicotinamide, which is a component of niacin, and pyruvate, and giving them to patients, again, up to 3 grams. So they started with a lower dose and gradually increased it up to 3 grams versus placebo. And they also showed significant improvement in pattern standard deviations on the visual field test. And we're not going to go and test people on understanding what pattern standard deviation means unless you're in the eye care field. But just to kind of break it down, basically means the improvement in the visual field sensitivity. So the test was more sensitive. People had better, more accurate responses. They were able to detect if a part of their side vision was missing or not a lot easier. But still fascinating, very interesting research. Not enough right now for doctors to really start making strong recommendations, but this was just a phase 2 clinical study. So we know that they're working on more clinical studies looking at this to support nerve function. And there is a little bit, there's not too much research on pyruvate, but there's a little bit of hinting that maybe pyruvate could even lower eye pressure. So something, again, we're going to be paying attention to. Now, I'm going to take a pause just for a second. I'm going to transition to talking about specific brands of supplements now. These are going to be the most popular brands that you will probably hear other eye doctors talk about, or if you go to your local clinic, they may be able to offer or recommend one of these different supplements I'm about to mention. Again, there's many different brands, so I can't talk about everything, but I'm just going to highlight some of the more common ones that you may be aware of or see, just so that people are familiar with it. And if people have further questions, I'm happy to try to answer those. The first one we've talked about previously, and those are the AREDS supplements. AREDS is the age-related eye disease study. They've done 2 versions of this study, first in the 1990s and again in the early to middle 2000s, 2006 and 2012. These are for patients or people with macular degeneration. These studies were trying to look at age-related eye diseases and if supplements could slow down or prevent an age-related eye disease from happening. And with those are pretty landmark studies. This is something that every eye doctor knows about. And basically, if somebody has an intermediate stage of macular degeneration or worse, these vitamins and supplements are recommended. They're absolutely indicated because they can show to slow down the progression of the disease by about 25% over the course of 5 years. So again, pretty significant. I will say that although it's indicated at that intermediate stage, technically because of clinical significance, I know a lot of doctors, if somebody has any stage of macular degeneration, even early, a lot of doctors will say, hey, if there's anything we can do, let's at least put them on it And so that's just keeping in mind that some doctors may prescribe it at an earlier stage. The AREDS supplements contain vitamin C and vitamin E because they're very potent antioxidants. Also zinc, as well as lutein and zeaxanthin, which we talked about. Zinc and copper I highlighted because with high amounts of zinc supplementation, it affects your copper absorption. So they throw copper in there a little bit, even though it's not specifically really that beneficial for the eye. Zinc, the original formulation had 80 milligrams, which is a lot because the upper limit of zinc supplementation is about 40 milligrams a day. And so some other brands and supplements in the macular degeneration space sometimes have lower amounts of zinc. There's even some zinc-free formulas that your doctor may recommend for you. One of the newer supplements I wanted to kind of highlight, because this just came out, you may be able to find it at local stores, or you may have your doctor recommend it or talk about it, is this one called Blink. Blink is from Bausch & Lomb, and it's a new clinically proven supplement for dry eye and contains a lot of the vitamins or supplements that I talked about today. It includes a higher amount of lutein and zeaxanthin, which again is great for many different parts of the eyesight and vision. It includes that nano curcumin that I talked about 200 milligrams, and it includes a little bit of vitamin D, about 600 international units, which again, something just to be aware of how much vitamin D you could be getting from just your daily intake through other methods and foodstuffs, but just something to keep in mind. The research for this is pretty fascinating because I've actually been aware of this study from 2021 for some time. It was a pretty small study, 60 participants. It was done over in India. They had people take this supplement and they did find improvement in Schirmer's test, so the amount of tear production, improvement in symptoms, the tear breakup time, basically the tear film stability, but also the osmolarity. So that was a great study. But they went a little bit further. They said, hey, let's test this out in a different population. Let's bring it to the United States. Let's see how they do, but we're also test for inflammation. So they went and tested for MMP9, which is an inflammatory biomarker we find in the tears. And they found significant improvements for the people taking the supplement after just 14 days and other parameters after just a month or two. So with that, I mean, that's pretty amazing considering this is a supplement you take once a day. There's only one smaller pill that you take once a day. So I thought this was pretty fascinating and is available now. Plus the lutein, zeaxanthin having so many benefits for the eye, I think are pretty incredible. Plus curcumin having other benefits for other parts of the eye. So I'm excited that this is available now. Another one I wanted to feature and highlight that doctors, especially dry eye doctors, may recommend is something called Hydro Eye. I did a video on Hydro Eye maybe about a year or so ago. Hydro Eye has been on the market for some time. It includes vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin E, B6, and magnesium, but it also contains GLA, that gamma linoleic acid, that is an omega-6, but it's that special omega-6 that has anti-inflammatory properties. And they do this because they include some black currant seed oil, which is usually not found in most people's diets at a very high amount. And they have pretty amazing clinical evidence for Hydro Eye, and that's why a lot of dry eye doctors and specialists and even refractive surgeons often recommend Hydro Eye. So you can check out that video and learn a little bit more about the studies in that one if you want to find that video on Hydro Eye review that I've done in the channel. Omega-3s, just for brands, specifically for dry eye and retinal health, there's a lot of brands on the market, and I've talked about a few of them. The one that I've used personally and had good success with is from PRN. A lot of clinics recommend them. I included some links in the description below because they did offer a discount code if people want to purchase it online. But I do strongly always recommend and suggest that people try to purchase from a local business and support your local businesses whenever you can. But again, that's one really cool supplement. A newer one that also came on the market this last year is the Dry Eye Drink. The Dry Eye Drink is, I actually know one of the developers for this product is a really smart eye doctor down in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. He specializes in scleral contact lenses and dry eye. But he came up with this along with some other doctors and researching all these different vitamins and supplements. And so there's some of them on this list here that we didn't cover today because I felt like, there's a little research, but it's not a ton of clinical research that I felt like really labeling as the best right now. But they do include quite a few things. And what I really like is that they're trying to find ways to get people to not only drink more fluids, but get those fluids to get into the body. And that includes using a lot of electrolytes. They also include this new one, which is the dry eye PM drink. This is for a sleep aid. It includes melatonin. And melatonin, in fact, does have some antioxidant capabilities in the back of the eye within the retina. And there's some other research right now on melatonin potentially affecting macular degeneration and helping with macular degeneration. That's a deeper dive study, and we'll talk about that in future videos and then just the next maybe upcoming month or two. But let me know if you've used any of these supplements, any of the things like the dry eye drink, and if you've had any success with them. I would love to know how you guys are doing with that, because dry eye is a big subject. Then we also have, I just want to throw this one in here because people always ask about floaters and if there's anything they can do for their floaters. There's not much research, like good clinical evidence right now for supplements that can help the floaters in the back of the eye, other than this one. This is a vitreous health supplement. It is available. Some doctors recommend it. There's a few studies on it. It shows that it can maybe reduce the symptoms of floaters. I did a video on it if you want to see more of the detail and the publication of that. And I've had some people say yes, that it's helped them. And I've had some people kind of go the other way, say it didn't really make a difference. But again, do your own research on that and let me know what you think about these vitreous health floaters if you've ever used it. Okay, so I know we've been going at this for about 45 minutes. Thank you guys so much. I hope you got a lot of value out of learning about these different supplements and what the research is showing. Again, this is something I'm always constantly researching and will be continually reporting on as new things roll out, especially if it has good clinical, meaningful significance. As far as going forward here for the next few minutes, we'll do a live Q&A. I do want to give just a disclaimer. First, let me know if you guys have questions, start putting them in now, put question marks, put your question with some question marks afterwards so I can see it stand out. I just want to say that, again, with these live streams, I can't give a diagnosis or prescribed treatment because I believe you deserve the very best examination and the best treatment possible. And I know that's with an in-person eye exam. Through social media or through a live stream like this, I can't evaluate the eye, so I can't give a diagnosis or prescribed treatment. But if you have a question, I will do my very best to answer in an educational manner so that everybody can learn. The last part is just a huge shout out and thank you to all of our channel supporting members. Again, thank you. You make these live streams possible and you help make the channel what it is and keeps us going and motivated. And the people who are channel members also get priority in the live Q&A during these sessions. So if you want to support the channel, if you want access, you want that you want the priority during our Q&A sessions, then please consider supporting us. And thank you. So I already see some questions coming in. I know we've had a lot of questions throughout the lectures. Guys, thank you so much. Let's see. Thank you, Lynetta. I see you coming in here. Lynetta mentioned that they just had surgery for Salzman nodules on the eye and maybe some contact, you had a bandage, contact lens, and some eye drops. Are there any other supplements for the eye? So first, I'll just start off for people who don't know what Salzman's nodules are. These are basically kind of like scar bumps that form on the surface of the cornea. And this occurs usually due to chronic inflammation and surface disease of the eye, things like chronic dry eyes. But they still don't fully understand what causes them, but we know that they occur more often in chronic surface disease of the eye. Thankfully, they can be more or less scraped and removed to some degree, but they in the early stages, they don't cause much problems for vision, but in later stages, they can start interrupting, causing astigmatism and other problems. They can also interfere with fitting of things like contact lenses. So as far as, the treatment after a surgery for things like Salzman's, the best thing is keeping the eye lubricated, as well as people following whatever your surgeon recommends. Some surgeons may recommend taking vitamin C of some degree to help with healing. There's also potentially other medications, anti-inflammatories that they may prescribe for you. I personally think anything that's going to support the tear film and ocular surface is going to be beneficial, whether they be specific supplements that we talked about in this lecture or something that maybe your doctor would recommend. Hope that kind of helps. I know it's not anything super specific, but again, the big thing is just anything you can do to support tear film quality and production. I love asking this question. UFO Joe, thank you for being a supportive member. I see you there. Thank you. Asks, is there any side effect of omega-3 and lutein? So lutein, I'll take right off the bat. Right now, there's only one reported case I could find of somebody who took too much lutein. They took excessively high amounts. And all they found was that during an eye examination, the retina looked shiny and glistening. They basically had kind of a reflectile appearance of the retina, but otherwise there weren't really any negative effects. Now, that being said, I don't recommend people go take excessive amounts of lutein. Again, the research shows the optimal kind of clinical benefit is somewhere in that 10 to like 20 milligram range. So I don't recommend someone go out there and just take tons of lutein supplements. As far as omega-3, there are some concerns in the literature about omega-3s leading to thinning of the blood. That used to be kind of an older thing, but since then, I've never seen any doctors or surgeons even throw a concern about somebody taking omega-3 and having surgery and risk of bleeding. There still is kind of this thought or fear about that. I've even heard some arguments that because omega-3s often include a type of vitamin E included in it, that might be one of the causes of thinning of the blood, but I haven't seen any research to substantiate that either. The other potential complication of omega-3s that you'll hear right now, especially in social media, is that omega-3 supplementation could lead to atrial fibrillation when taken in higher doses. Again, there's different arguments for that one. I personally am not studying the cardiac effects of omega-3 to major extents. It's something I'm aware of, but I usually, again, don't ever recommend over the 3,000 milligrams a day dosage. But it's something I will probably look more into just so I have a good answer for you next time. But still, really good question to ask about those. So thank you. Cristiano, thank you. How about vitamin C? Vitamin C is very good for the eyes. Vitamin C is a strong antioxidant. In fact, some of the most highly concentrated vitamin C in the body is inside of the eye. The lens inside of the eye that has to be clear for you to see through needs constant bathing of antioxidants. Otherwise, it'll start to oxidize and turn cloudy and form a cataract. And so vitamin C has been studied in several different research studies to see if taking extra supplements of vitamin C could reduce the risk of cataract formation. Again, we know it has a role in macular degeneration. Most studies on vitamin C preventing cataracts is hit or miss. The large consensus is that no, it doesn't help with preventing macular or preventing cataract formation in a normal nourished individual, but people who are malnourished or vitamin C deficient will benefit from vitamin C supplementation. But thankfully, unless somebody has scurvy, vitamin C deficiency is not very common. But good question. Thank you. La Will, can orange juice help with red eyes? Tough for me to say. I don't specifically think so. If somebody is severely vitamin C deficient and has scurvy, interestingly enough, scurvy has been reported to induce autoimmune dry eye in what's called Sjogren's syndrome. There are cases of people who had scurvy and developed Sjogren's syndrome, a severe form of dry eye. And then when they gave them vitamin C back, they rebounded and their Sjogren's syndrome went away. So kind of fascinating. But I normally would not think that orange juice specifically would help treat dry eye. But I do love that question. Thank you. We got a lot of questions coming in. I love this one. Cristiano asks again, is it normal to have dry eyes only at wake up, but not during the day? So some people do have dry eye symptoms when they first wake up in the morning. Usually if somebody has these symptoms, doctors will start thinking that someone may, in fact, be sleeping with their eyes open a little bit. This could be that they truly have what's called nocturnal lag ophthalmos, where their eyes don't close all the way. And that leaves the surface of the eye exposed to air. It dries out. So when they wake up, their eyes are red and they're painful and think can even be blurry in sometimes. Other people may still close their eyes, but their eyes aren't closing 100%. In fact, they're not getting a good lid seal. The oil glands of the eye should develop a little seal of oil between the lids and they close down. But if they're open just a little bit, that tear film still evaporates. That leaves a thin layer of damaged tissue over the night. And so again, people often will wake up with red eyes or burning, irritated eyes in the early morning. So that's a big flag to us. And for treatments for that, I've done videos talking about that. Usually doctors will recommend either ointments or gels at nighttime to try to help with that. There are sleep masks and sleep goggles for dry eye. And then there is an eyelid tape called Sleep Tight, Sleep Right, which is a surgical type tape that's designed to hold the eyelids closed while people sleep, which is, in my experience, most effective for people who also have sleep apnea and sleep with a CPAP machine. But also, again, a fantastic question. Let me just make sure we got a lot more questions in here. I do see this one from James, asks about what about sports drinks, like sport drink tablets, powders like Gatorade, Pedialyte. They have a lot of electrolytes and vitamins. So that's kind of where the whole idea of dry eye drink really came from, was thinking about these electrolyte drinks. The downside of a lot of the electrolyte drinks like Liquid IV, and some other ones, is that they oftentimes do have a lot of excess sugar or artificial sweeteners in some way. And there is really not too much clinical evidence to support that those specific mixtures of vitamins or what's in those specific products will benefit the eye health, where that's where dry eye drink is said, hey, let's look at everything in the research. Let's find good supplements that can mix well and actually mix together well in a powdered form and will dissolve well in a liquid that make it easier for people to digest and drink. Because that's another thing, is that I've learned through asking people who develop these products how they even come up with it. And I guess they have to go through hundreds of revisions to find a right mixture of these different vitamins and supplements that will actually dissolve in water and not cake and actually taste good, so that people will actually use it. So there's a lot of interesting things to find out about that. I think there is some benefit overall for people drinking more and having some electrolyte or some salts in there, because it does help with absorption a little bit better. But I am also concerned personally about excess sugar and even some forms of artificial sweetener. I like this one from Melissa. Are these supplements too advanced for someone who does not yet have dry eye or other big developments in the eyes as preventative care? So thank you, Melissa, for that question. So most of these supplements are not too advanced, especially things like Lutein Zeaxanthin. I think that's something that everybody could be benefit from taking, because usually if you're just eating foodstuffs, they've done research and found that people who even eat primarily like a strong vegetarian or even vegan diets, they're eating like true whole foods, they usually still don't get even close to the optimal amount of lutein and zeaxanthin in their diet. And the belief to that is probably because the quality of our food in these modern times are not as good as they maybe used to be, because of the way we've selectively bred different types of fruits and vegetables, and the way nutritional sources in the ground supply maybe have changed. And so I think supplementing with lutein and zeaxanthin is a great, healthy thing for people of all ages. In fact, lutein is put into baby formula now because it has such a significance on brain development and eye development. So I think for anybody, even if you don't have any symptoms, anything going on with the eye, lutein zeaxanthin might be kind of the easy, low-hanging fruit that everybody could benefit from in preventing eye diseases and enhancing their preventing kind of aging eye diseases, as well as enhancing their visual performance. I know there's, again, a lot of good questions that are still on here, but I know it's coming up to a full hour and there's other things going on this evening. Please stay tuned to future videos that will be coming out on, and please let me know if there's future major topics you would like to see a live stream on and doing a deep dive into. Please drop your questions still in the comments and in the live stream chat, because I'll be answering questions and prioritizing to answer the questions on this live stream and video for the next several days. So thank you guys so much for being here. I appreciate your support, and I hope you have a fantastic